The Elements of Friendship, Book 1, Harmony, by Armis Vigeland. Chapter 8, The Crystal Mountains. Sweet Celestia! Rarity gasped at the sight ahead of them. It really is a sight, isn't it? Applejack said with wide eyes, to which every pony, and Spike, nodded in agreement. It was indeed the Crystal Mountains, which rested at the northernmost edge of the wide plains of Earth, marked the northern border of Equestria. Beyond the Crystal Mountains was the Sea of Eris, and beyond that, the Crystal Empire in the frozen circle around the North Pole of Harmonia. In a bygone era, the Crystal Mountains marked the boundary between the nascent Equestria and the Tansillary, which would become the Crystal Empire. The splintering of the Empire landmass off of the Equestrian continent and settling of it in the frozen circle was so heavily debated by tectonists the world over, with very few coming up with plausible ideas as to how it could have happened so suddenly. Neither was it fully understood how the Crystal Mountains had become so completely encrusted with precious stones of all sorts. Diamonds, amethysts, pygaminas, rubies, sapphires, emeralds, topazes, beryls, opals. The study of geologists and thermologists amounted to nothing, leaving a mystery and a beauty for the ages.
It's amazing,
Fluttershy piped in. I never thought I'd see these in person. Twilight breathed, her eyes sparkling at the mountains in the distance. It's just a bunch of shiny rocks, Rainbow Dash muttered. Just a bunch of shiny rocks? Spike asked in indignation, his claws balled into fists and pupils narrowing into slits. That's a veritable buffet right there! So many different types of gems there. Saliva dripped from the corner of Spike's mouth, his fangs bared, his spine standing upright. And they're all ripe for the taking! Sorry, Spike, but we're going to have to wait for you to sate that gem appetite of yours, Twilight said warningly. We're going to need to rest up here for a day or so. We might need to clean ourselves up. I can't imagine what we smell like after 3 weeks of almost completely steady cantering. Probably smell worse than Winona at the end of a hot mid-solace day, Applejack mused.
Rarity shivered. Oh, please, don't make me think of such horrors, Applejack.
I don't think that Winona smells quite that bad, Rarity.
Not your dog. Me! I can't punish the thought of smelling so dreadful.
Yeah, it stinks, don't it? Interjected Rainbow Dash, wearing an uncanny smirk as she caught her eyebrows with that statement. Rarity gave the flying Pegasus a withering look.
That droll statement was so unfunny I forgot to laugh.
Pinky gasped sharply, clamping Rarity's muzzle between her hooves.
Ah! You forgot how to laugh, Rarity? That's awful. I can't imagine what sort of life you live not knowing until you got to...
Pinky, she didn't really... Pinky ignored Twilight's statement.
Quick, Rarity! Ask me what the ruby said to the diamond. Pinkie Pie, I hardly see what this... Ask me the question!
Recoiling terror, Rarity whimpered.
What did the ruby say to the diamond?
Immediately, Pinky beamed.
Nothing silly. Gems don't talk.
Rarity let out a snort and sharp whinny that only tenaciously passed for a laugh. It seemed to satisfy Pinky, though, because he gave a neighing giggle as he prompted to the air. Guys! Twilight barked, getting every pony's attention. We're going to need to make camp here. Clean ourselves up so we don't stink any guards out, and... Wait, guards? I thought there wouldn't be any so far off for Canterlot, Rainbow Dash interjected. Like I said, the Crystal Mountains are a very secure facility, within which Queen Celestia has stored all sorts of materials that must be kept apart from the average equestrian. That includes, apparently, studies of Ponyville culture. She must have been planning for this day. Maybe, Applejack said lowly. You think maybe that's why it's this masquerade is so sifty about puzzling too much? Anything is possible, Twilight replied, shifting her forelegs in a side shrug. All I know is that the sooner we rest up, the sooner we'll be rested up to get into the Crystal Mountains. And we don't need any more delays in getting our hooves on that book.
Why don't we listen to the right radio for a tinky bit?
Pinky said brightly, balancing the little gumball radio on the forehoof. while she balanced herself on her other forehoof and flapped her hind legs about in the air, her tail twirling about like some kind of whirligig. "You know what? Let's," Twilight said. "We need to cool down a bit before we work out what we're going to do. I have a good idea about my part, but we'll need to talk about what every pony else does before we take another step towards those mountains." Pinky's gumball radio had seen a good deal of work during the 24 gross mile trot, being used to keep updates on the means by which other equestrians had reacted to Daytime's extended leave of absence, to playing music from Octavia Melody and Final Scratch's DJ station, and received clandestine reports that Nightmare Moon was likely cracking down on, to lighten the atmosphere in the seemingly endless days when they could do nothing but canter forward through the seemingly endless wide plains. They'd taken care to shut it off as they approached towns, villages, and farms. It would not do to attract undue attention to themselves. Reading between the lines of what made it to the radio waves, the band learned through the radio that unicorns in virtually every other major town, village, or city in Equestria were casting heliogenous spells over each settlement to counteract the everlasting night. The shadow bolts in Nightmare Guard were evidently stretched in, trying to suppress these disparate insurrections. Technically, though, the heliogenous spells were occasionally dispelled by the nightmare forces who struck. Twilight been encouraged as to her magical strength, her TQ, or Thaumaturgical Quotient, by the rest of her band at this revelation, as Nightmare Moon herself was unable to dispel the heliogenous-generated sun she created for Ponyville. It was also through the radio that the band learned of a large group of ponies who were migrating out of Equestria to the other hemisphere of Harmonia, which was still sunlit, only for inhabitants of said opposing hemisphere to arrive in Equestria, a state that other side of the planet was scorching and dry. While this was news to Twilight and her band, it was not unexpected. The sun could not have disappeared from the sky everywhere on the planet. The fact of the matter was that one side of the planet was being exposed to perpetual sunlight, while the other was subject to eternal night, did nobody on any hemisphere any favors. With word spreading on each side of the globe as to the return of Nightmare Moon, it was unlikely that the Selenic demon would only see resistance from within Equestria. This, together with Pinky's continuous and humorous encouragements, was what enabled the band to transverse the 24 gross mile journey from Ponyville to the Crystal Mountains. Now, Pinky's Gumball Radio was belting out maniac politic music by Cheese Sandwich Band, which elicited light and laughter from even Rarity, who still fancied herself on being haute couture. With this laughter came a lessening in tension, and with this lessening in tension came heavy eyelids and drowsiness. Quickly rousing herself, Twilight looked over to Pinkie Pie. "Pinkie, do you think you could take first watch?" Pinkie hopped into the air with wiggling hooves.
You bet! You bet I can, Twilight!
She suddenly and uncharacteristically narrowed her eyes.
No pony will get past my eyes while I'm awake!
Twilight nodded, knowing that she could trust Pinkie to keep her word. The bubbly pink-earth pony had proven her mettle during their 108-day trek, as she had eagerly volunteered to take first watch that very first night. Against her better judgment at the time, Twilight acquiesced, if only to keep Pinkie quiet. To her astonishment, Pinkie had kept a vigilant watch from the moment she had taken her spot around the perimeter to the moment that every pony had awoken 6 hours later refreshed, bright-eyed, and ready for another day of continuous cantering. It was then that Twilight decided that, after Applejack, Pinkie was her first choice for first watch. Maybe she's just so crazy already that a little sleep deprivation doesn't mean anything for her, Twilight thought grimly as she drifted off to sleep. Coming to, Twilight spotted Rainbow Dash flying in a tight circle around the sleeping band. Pinkie had apparently tagged a Cyan Pegasus as her second watch. Giving the Pegasus a glance, Twilight received a small but emphatic salute in response. What time is it?" Twilight asked.
Rainbow Dash blinked. Does it really matter? I mean, it's nighttime all the time, Twilight.
Let me rephrase that. How long have we been asleep? Rainbow Dash looked up to the starry sky.
Well, let's see. Pinkie woke me up an hour ago so she could get some shut-eye.
And she told me she hopped around us exactly 5 Mega Grows, 2 Grows, 6 does it at one time, so it's been 6 hours. Wait, you know how long a Pinkie jump is? The Pegasus shrugged. When you lived in the same village as Pinkie Pie for as long as I have, you pick things up. And Pinkie Pie jumps, provided she doesn't hover with her weird Pinkie magic, are usually in the ballpark about 1.19 seconds long. Twilight rubbed her eyes. Still tired? No, I'm just weirded out that you're using decimals. Rainbow Dash narrowed her cerise eyes at Twilight Sparkle. Just because I don't like reading doesn't mean I'm dumb. Oh yeah? Twilight smirked. Yeah. Name the 5 most recent commanders of the Wonderbolts, starting with the most recent. Rainbow scoffed. That's easy. There's Spitfire, then there's... Rainbow Dash's eyes widened a little, and her teeth clenched together as her mind ground to a halt. She rubbed her hose together nervously as Twilight raised an eyebrow at her. The Pegasus cackled nervously. Can we rate check on that? Twilight scowled. Okay, fine. I'm not as well read on the Wonderbolts. There, I said it. Happy? I appreciate the honesty, Twilight commented. Though, you could have been a bit more upfront about it. If you want to join them, then you'll need to read up on all you can about them. Memorize names, places, maneuvers, battles that the Wonderbolts took part in. Sounds like a bunch of egghead stuff, but Spitfire did say something about that. I always thought the Wonderbolts were just flyers. I'll have you know, Rainbow Dash, that the Wonderbolts do more than just fly about, leaving contrails of thunderclouds and sunbolts. The maneuvers they pull in their shows are based off the military tactics that were used since the Wonderbolts were founded, grows dozen and 11 years ago. They're that old? Who's the old fossil that founded them? Twilight's eyes almost popped out of her head. General Firefly was a great mare, but she was hardly ancient when Queen Celestia banished Nightmare Moon. I've seen moon cuttings from that time, and she looked quite young. She stood by Queen Celestia's side after the banishment of Nightmare Moon, and oversaw the beginnings of the Equestrian military as we know it, including the Wonderbolts. General Firefly? Rainbow Dash smirked. Sounds like my kind of mare. The way I understood it, she was a very strong-willed mare, always looking for trouble. Not too unlike a certain Pegasus I've come to know, Twilight said lowly, looking at Rainbow Dash from under furrowed eyebrows. But General Firefly had resolve, fortitude. She knew when there was a job to do, and she did it, and she never let Celestia hanging. Hey, I waited for you guys. It's not that I'm too fast, it's you guys are too slow. General Firefly was also disciplined. Never abandon your comrades. Look, if you want me to apologize, I already did. I'm not asking for an apology. I would just like for you to consider ponies who aren't as awesome as you claim to be. You asked me to prove I could clear the sky in 10 seconds, and I did. I told you I don't talk out of my land sakes, Rainbow. You trying to go for some kind of shadow wrecker or something? Let us start. Twilight and Rainbow looked at their company. In all their shouting back and forth, neither had realized that the rest of their group had woken up. Each seemed quite rejuvenated, even Pinkie Pie, who could not have gotten much more than an hour's rest. How was your power naps, Pinks? Powerful! Pinkie replied, with a backflip onto a hoof stand. Power nap? Rainbow arched a prismatic eyebrow at the lavender unicorn. Wait, you know everything there is to know about everything ever, but you don't know what a power nap is? Should I? Twilight felt suddenly worried, and it showed in her own voice. Over the dozen years of her tutelage to Queen Celestia herself, Twilight Sparkle read a good number of books, and the following were reports she written on them. Most were of her own volition, and not mandatory for the Queen's assignments. But never, in any of the readings she had pursued, had she ever seen the weird power nap. Had she overlooked something in a book of hers? Was this power nap some sort of secret to unlocking greater power through napping in a particular way? Did these Ponyville ponies really hold some sort of secret power that could help her triumph over Nightmare Moon? A power nap's when you only sleep for like half an hour or so, Rainbow Dash explained shortly. You get all the benefits of a full night's sleep, but in only like half the time. Something in Twilight's mind snapped. An eye twitched. Technically, Rainbow, that power nap of yours will only be about a quarter or an eighth of a night's rest. Don't bring math into powder naps, E.T. It won't end well. Trust me, I know. Only you could bring a math into a power nap. It caused such mayhem, Pinkie Pie.
Well, it worked out in the end. I mean, well, apart from Mr. Cake's tail getting caught in that clothes wringer, and Auntie Mayor Silver Mane Dye going missing, and all the leaves on the Golden Oaks Library being played in plaid. Girls?
What's thinking, Fluttershy?
I think you girls should look at Twilight.
Twilight? Will Circle Cube? Twilight had zoned out, staring blankly at Rainbow Dash, even as she carried on her conversation with the other four ponies. Spike, who had just begun to stir, immediately looked to Rarity, then to Twilight, when he saw where the alabaster unicorn was looking. Mom? Twilight shook her head swiftly, her eyes flattening as she did so. She fixed her expression into a more confrontational look at the cyan Pegasus.
That's it? A power nap is just what you call a nap where you can't put in the time for a full 4 hours sleep?
Hey, don't get mad at me. I didn't name it. Besides, I thought an egghead like you would already know about power naps. Get more time into the day to read, right? Twilight prepared to snap at Rainbow Dash's cocky expression, but then processed those last 9 words, and a whole new range of scenarios opened up in her mind.
Rainbow Dash!
Twilight beamed.
I really shouldn't have gotten mad about you at power naps. They really sound useful for a reader with so little time on her hands.
I bet they would be! Rainbow Dash muttered. This did nothing to dismiss Twilight's high spirits. Now, she could potentially earn a claim for being the pony who read through a treatise on the exchange of spell matrices through Alicorn content faster than any pony. Said treatise was notorious for being particularly sesquipedalian and loquacious, even for a treatise. It took an average of 36 hours to read in full. So, it took most ponies 3 days to read it. With power naps, Twilight could read it in 2 days. This was... Why are we focused so much on power lamps? Applejack interjected. We gotta be planning on getting into and out of them there crystal mountains. Twilight recoiled, shaking her head. She had been so sidetracked by this little discourse, she had almost forgotten about what they had all come this way for.
Right. Thank you, Applejack,
Twilight said seriously. You always keep me on track. You can count on me for that, replied the polemical Earth Pony, with crossed forelegs. So, what's the plan? Rainbow Dash asked. We've kind of trusted you knew what to do for the past 3 weeks. Ready to spill?
Just about,
Twilight said sharply. If you were less blunt about it. Fluttershy stepped forward between Rainbow and Twilight. Was it coincidence, or was she interceding on her friend's benefit?
I'm sorry, Twilight,
she said.
But shouldn't we be worrying more about the Crystal Mountain plan?
Twilight bowed her head slightly to the yellow Pegasus.
As to Malade, Fluttershy, I don't know what's wrong with me. Maybe I'm a little sleep-deprived myself. Anyway, here's the plan.
Twilight then delineated the plan to her band, etching lines in the ground with one toe on her hoof, to represent the boundary of the Crystal Mountains a mile away, with their present location, the path that security would head to see their distraction, and the assumed path they would need to take to avoid security detail. Twilight had been mulling over the details over the fortnight and a half since they crested the North Equest Mountains. She recalled looking over an outdated overview of the Crystal Mountains the year before. She had no idea how much stronger the security had gotten since then. She knew about, and warned a band of such, silent alarm spells that were placed around many of the most vitally important items kept in stock within the Crystal Mountains. Twilight empathized, particularly for Rainbow Dash, that caution was of the utmost importance, and that quietness and stealth would be needed in the event the stealth spells Twilight had learned under Queen Celestia would not be sufficient for the security they meet. Twilight took in a deep breath. Well, I think that's everything we're going to need to cover. Any questions, any pony? The 5 mares had set themselves down on their haunches, listening to Twilight attentively, though attention could easily be feigned, as Twilight learned by so many social climbers back in Canterlot. Sure enough, Rainbow Dash put a hoof into the air. Twilight sighed. Yes, Rainbow Dash. You sure you can handle your part of the distraction? Twilight paused for a moment, impressed. She had expected a more intricate question out of the Cyan Pegasus. Well, I am a more adept unicorn than Trixie was. I'm sure I can handle it. Raindrops blinked. I guess. Alright, any more questions? Some seconds passed. No pony raised a hoof, but Spike raised a claw. Yes, Spike. Spike blushed. Can I go with Verity? Twilight chuckled lightly. Of course you can, Spike. Verity, keep a close eye on. You can depend on me, darling, to keep Spike safe during this operation. Spike trotted up to her, clasping his claws endearingly. Isn't she just wonderful, Twilight? Verity giggled shortly. Oh, Spike, you flatterer. Twilight cast her eyes about the band. Well, any pony else? Silence greeted Twilight, as he gave a sly smile to the group. All right then, every pony. Grab your saddlebags. We're going to get that book! Officially, the Crystal Mountains had been first transformed into a storage facility for extremely sensitive items, less than a dozen after the banishment of Nightmare Moon. In a confrontation unrelated to Nightmare Moon, Queen Celestia came to possess several artifacts brimming with forbidden magic, known to some as dark magic, or black magic. Though the Queen worked hard to discourage such classification, as neither dark magic nor black magic were inherently evil, and even light magic and white magic could be used toward ill ends. Storing them under Canterlot was considered, but rejected. It was a heavy population center, and a port of call for airships and semblance the world over. The Queen's eyes drifted toward the Crystal Mountains. They were too treacherous for the residents of the Crystal Empire to traverse, and at any rate, the Crystal Ponies usually made port at Vancouver, then known as Columbia, to the west, or Manhattan, New Amsterdam at the time, to the east anyway. Over the course of 2 gross years, the entirety of the Crystal Mountains interior was carved out into a labyrinthine complex, save for a 4-dozen and 2-meter thick facade, bolstered by all manner of defensive and repulsive spells, burrowing at least 2 miles down below the base of the mountains. Laws were passed forbidding the settlement of any land between 1 gross miles of the Crystal Mountains in case of a cataclysmic breakdown of security. A token guard force was kept on patrol to maintain the defensive spells, which were constantly being updated to counter advancement in offensive spell work, and to assure that the items within remained tranquil. For not all of the spells were meant to keep things out, but to keep just as many in. As the facility within the Crystal Mountains saw its constant swelling, many artifacts that were possessed of fell eldritch magic began to stir, and countermeasures had to be developed to prevent them from visiting terror unimaginable upon the ponies of Equestria. No pony knew exactly what simmered beneath the surface of the Crystal Mountains, but many terrible stories had spread over the centuries by word of mouth, and by guards ponies lucky enough to successfully transfer out of the Crystal Mountain duty, driven half insane and living off a compensatory stipend granted by Queen Celestia herself. Tales of quasi-sentient books that twisted the minds of innocent ponies into bloodthirsty puppets. Of mirrors that sucked out the soul of any pony unlucky enough to even glance at her or his reflection. Of feedbacks filled with ponies' teeth that turned the ponies' bones into splintered wood when worn. Of troughs of water that drained the fluids from any pony sorry enough to drink from it. The list of horror stories could go on forever. Of course, as time passed, and awareness of how to deal with certain artifacts became more widespread, the deterioration of Crystal Mountain Guards' minds trickled off, though would usually occasionally spike shortly after the acquisition of a new magical artifact. As things presently stood, the 2 guards on duty at the unassumingly small entrance to the Crystal Mountain's secure storage facility were bored out of their respective skulls by the tedium of the far too long-lasting night sky. So, I just got a message in the horse code just after lunch, Dior's Pegasus said abruptly, his blue mane sticking in every direction, and even hanging over his heavy-lidded eyes. Really? Replied his compatriot. A hazel-eyed earth pony, with an earthy coat and dark brown mane. His eyes had shadows under them as well, and neither had gotten a good sleep in weeks, and orders were often slurred and repeated angrily as a result. "What did it say, Flash?" "Said that Nightmare Moon came back. Stopped the sun on the other side of Harmonia," Flash said flatly. "Don't that explain this, Blade?" He nodded lazily, out to the gleaming stars and glowing moon. "Oh," Blade said lazily. If either were at their full faculties, the return of Nightmare Moon and the eternal night would have seen a far more animated response. As it stood, they knew they would be better served saving their energy in case any pony or anything got too close to the Crystal Mountain's secure storage facility. Not that any pony ever bothered to come up here. Not even dragons looking for gems for their hoards bothered to attempt any sort of attack on the mountains. It really was as dull as a worn horseshoe these days up at the Crystal Mountain's secure storage facility. You know, Blade sighed, sometimes I wish my special talent was tempting fate, so that I could say, I really wish that something would happen out here at the Crystal Mountains, then, bang, something happens. Flash only nodded and gave a grunt of acknowledgement. It seemed like fate had a sense of humor. A tremendous Ursa Major, bright pink in color, a white six-pointed star gleaming on its forehead, reared up as if out of nowhere, bellowing to the heavens a half-mile off to the east. Its claws were as thick as tree trunks, its teeth wider than a draft horse's torso, its gaping mouth wide enough to swallow a six-pony house. Flash Sentry and Violet Blaze's hearts leapt into their throats, and adrenaline shot through their bodies. Any malaise that hung over them moments before had vanished. All that was left was an exhilarating terror pumping through their veins as they faced each other. "Valiant Blade, alert the security detail! They probably felt the roar in their briefcases, but tell them anyway!" Valiant Blade smiled in spite of the situation, saluted Flash, "We'll go!" and galloped back into the storage facility. The Ursa Major continued to prowl about the exterior of the Crystal Mountains, too close to the entrance for comfort. If it figured out there was an entire details of ponies within the mountain, it would not rest until it smashed the mountains apart to feed upon them. Within minutes, Valiant Blade had returned with every able-bodied mare and stallion in the storage facility, saluted Flash Sentry. The herds of guards ponies galloped, or flew in the case of Pegasi, toward the Ursa Major in the hopes of driving it off from the Crystal Mountains. After 5 minutes, when they had gotten within a stone's throw of the Ursa Major, a shadowy bland slipped up into the entrance of the Crystal Mountains secure storage facility.
"We made it!" Twilight beamed. "That worked splendidly, darling,"
said Rarity smilingly, in spite of her ragged mane and rough hooves.
"Well, how boy?"
Applejack looked at the carven cavern leading into the Crystal Mountains secure storage facility. It was not lit up by any means, but there could be no mistaking this for a naturally formed cave. The walls of gray stone were exactly parallel with one another, as was the earthen floor with the ceiling, leading deep into the mountains.
"This is some quality earth pony work."
"I think I should warn you guys," Twilight said sharply, getting every pony's attention. "If what I remember about the Crystal Mountains is still accurate, there are all sorts of evil artifacts being stored here. Most of them should be under containment, but just don't touch anything, no matter how much it tempts you."
"How much it tempt us?"
Applejack echoed.
"Darling, what could possibly be so tempting?"
Twilight hesitated. She was not exactly inclined to tell them exactly what could be found in the Crystal Mountains secure storage facility, nor was she entirely sure what could have been introduced into the mountain's warehouse, since he had read about the Crystal Mountains. She knew that, as a filly, she was always terrified of the idea that Nightmare Moon was hiding under her bed at night. Finally, her mother had set her mind at ease, her Alicorn lighting up blue to show there was nothing there but a pair of shining ping-pong balls that she had taken for eyes. Knowing that imagination was more powerful than words, she took a deep breath. "You don't want to know what could tempt you down here." she said as she gestured into the mountains with her horn. Yeah, she does, Rainbow Dash interjected. I'm pretty sure we all do. I'm fairly certain that what's down in these here castle mountains is better worth not knowing about. Thank you for your continuing support, Applejack, Twilight said brightly. Now, every pony after me. And with that, Twilight led the path down the tunnel, followed by Spike, Applejack, Rarity, Rainbow Dash, Pinkie Pie, and Fluttershy. The tunnel slooped down slightly, at a steady angle set by earth ponies, probably long dead, lit by the occasional grate in the ceiling, revealing a glimmer light cast by unicorns, probably long dead. Though the tunnel itself was not long, only a couple of rows of hooves, the trip seemed to take an eternity. There was no way of knowing what was happening outside, except judging by the Ursa Major outside, which was no accurate barometer of how much time they had to search for the studies of Ponyville culture. Their every hoofstep seemed to echo with exceptional clarity, as though the very mountain themselves were trying to alert guards ponies as to intruders.
Twilight?
Even Fluttershy's hushed voice seemed to have magnified in the tunnel. Yes, Fluttershy?
Well, will the guards ponies know something is up when they can't touch your Ursa Major?
Well, my Ursa Major should be intelligent enough to avoid being touched by them. The hostess of Twilight's companions stopped, as he turned to see why. The looks on their faces, illuminated dimly in the faint glimmer light of the tunnel itself, were of shock and astonishment. You mean that they're bear-tied and outsides alive? Applejack stammered. Not exactly, Applejack, replied Twilight. It might be acting out in ways that would prevent those guards from touching it either physically or magically. Better they suspect an unusually fast Ursa than know it's an illusion. But it's not in any way self-aware, which is the hallmark of something that is truly alive. Rarity blinked.
Darling, I did not believe that was quite how Trixie Moon's illusion spell worked.
Oh? And what makes you think an expert in all illusion magic, Rarity? All them airs you put on, they say?
Ha, ha, ha. Very funny, Applejack. As I was saying, I have a very keen eye for how ponies' minds tick. It's how I determine what a mare is looking for in a saddle when coming to my carousel couture. And though I know that your Ursa Major is a dead ringer for hers, even being the color of your dream shimmer, like hers was, it behaves altogether more autonomously. Well, I guess I might have subconsciously improved on Trixie's illusion magic. Never actually have seen her doing it, but... Wait, so you mean you actually wrote a new spell, darling?
Not exactly. See what I mean, Mom? Spike piped in, spreading his arms wide. You're amazing! No wonder Queen Celestia picked you as her student. Twilight's ears flopped, as she felt herself smiling stupidly and flushing pink. I'm not all that special. The Queen just took me in so I could train myself up enough to turn Mom and Dad back to normal. Not just that, judging by the string of clues she's left us, Rainbow Dash cut in. I'll agree. Don't you think it might be odd, look you, that she put so much faith in you and she didn't think you were a real swell magic doer? Twilight turned away, facing back down the tunnel. You guys are just saying that to make me feel better about myself.
Of course we are!
Pinkie suddenly popped up in front of her, despite Twilight not having heard her move.
It's because we all like you!
Once more, Pinkie Pie administered a rib-crushing hug to Twilight's barrel, and once more, Twilight felt like she was being hugged by a very fuzzy octopus. Looking down, she seen that Pinkie's forelegs seemed to be bending fluidly around her multiple times, as if they had no bones, and that wasn't all. But Pinkie had already let go, and immediately grabbed Twilight's face in her rather rubbery hooves, her spirally blue eyes filling Twilight's vision.
It's not wrong to want to make some pony happy just to make them happy, Twilight, you silly filly. We're your cheering squad when you need it. Don't forget it!
Looking over her shoulder at the mares standing behind her, and offering her each of their unique smiles. Applejack sloppy, but also steady. Rainbow Dash, irreverent and fangy. Rarity, graceful and strong. Fluttershy, small and sincere. Twilight felt her heart sinking in her barrel. as he never felt such kinship with any ponies before. After everything she had seen with all the social climbers and hoof lickers before, and especially after becoming Queen Celestia's personal protege, she had foolishly assumed that every pony everywhere was exactly the same. There was no reason that any pony wanted to know you unless they could get something out of it. The sole exception seemed to be Queen Celestia herself, such a paragon of patience and kindness that even the most meanest and most pretty pony could easily see the light of the world just by meeting her. Spike had the reason of seeing Twilight as his mother. But these ponies, they wanted to be her friend, just for her being her. Twilight shook her head. "We better get going," she said clinically. "We've wasted enough time in this tunnel as it is." But as they continued their trot down the tunnel into the hub of the Crystal Mountain Secure Storage Facility, Twilight wore a gentle smile on her muzzle. Tears of warm joy slid down her face. The central hub of the Crystal Mountain Secure Storage Facility was a wide, perfectly circular chamber honed out of solid rock, lit by intermittent torches along the wall. Between each pair of torches, enchanted to glow whiter and brighter than normal fire, was a hallway leading deeper into the facility in every direction. At the opposite end of the hub from the entryway was a ramp leading up into higher rings of the hub, each one also featuring bright torches and hallways into further subsections. At the right hoof corner of the hub was a larger hallway, obviously leading into the living quarters for the guards' ponies. Despite the brightness, or perhaps because of it, the atmosphere was very unfriendly, as though some pony or something did not want them there. "Oh boy," breathed Applejack. "This place just keeps surprising us. Where do we even start?" Twilight examined one hallway entrance carefully. Etched into the wall above one of the torches were the words, "Equestria Acquisitions." "Equestria?" Rainbow Dash asked. "Some pony must not have paid enough attention to spelling." "No, this is where the artifacts from the undersea kingdom of Equestria were kept," Twilight explained. "I do believe I have heard of that," Rarity said. "Is that not the realm of mermaids and sea ponies?" "It is, Rarity, and that means that these storage archives were categorized alphabetically." "So, where do we start the search?" asked Fluttershy. "If I had to guess..." Twilight scanned around the hub, squinting at the lettering by each torch. After a few moments, her alicorn glimmered pink, a thin glimmer beam shining out at each distant etching in each hallway, the letters glowing pink brightly. After a quick sweep, Twilight's glimmer beam settled upon a singular hallway on the single level, the letters gleaming out for every pony to see. "Ponyville Acquisitions." "There!" Twilight shouted triumphantly. "All right, let's go!" Rainbow Dash cheered, gearing up for a flying charge out of the Ponyville hallway. "Ahem!" The clearing of Twilight's throat stopped Rainbow Dash dead. Her ears flattened as she grinned nervously, floating to the ground and infamously nibbling at one of her primaries. Twilight smiled. "That's more like it. Every pony after me!" She cantered to the Ponyville corridor, with her band of companions at her heels. The hallway into the Ponyville section and entered into another hub, of course. For this was how the Crystal Mountain Secure Storage Facility was laid out. The central hub branched off into smaller hubs that themselves branched off into the expansive storage chambers throughout the Crystal Mountains. As such, many of the branching pathways could lead on for miles in any given direction. A simple but proven defense against any aspiring thieves. The isolation could often be enough to prompt the ne'er-do-well to turn themselves in and out of desperation to simply see some pony else again. So, when the path started to curve onto its side ahead of the band, most of them became tremendously unsettled. Pinkie just giggled.
"The hallway's so twisted." "Twilight, I think I'm going quite mad."
Verity breathed.
"The corridor, it seems like it's twisting."
"That's a part of how this facility was designed," Twilight explained, sounding a little uneasy of herself. Special gravity alteration spells were devised exclusively for this Crystal Mountain secure storage facility, so that storage chambers would not necessarily have to be level with one another. Each hallway twists and turns at any angle the designers please, regardless of the gravitational center of Harmonia itself. It's to disorient any pony who'd be daring enough to come all the way up here and try to steal something they shouldn't.
Well, it's really working,
Rainbow Dash said warily, floating in the middle of a twist in the hallway, trying to remain upright with the hallway's original orientation.
I feel like I'm flying sideways.
You should land on the floor and give walking a trial, Rainbow, Applejack sighed. You're just making things all complicated like for yourself. Rainbow Dash gave a look of bitter defiance to Applejack, before alighting on the stony floor, kicking spitefully at the smooth surface.
We all have our buttons to bear, Rainbow Dash, Verity said. We must progress forward in spite of, and because of, the troubles that we'll face.
Yeah, I gotcha. No need to sound like some dark horse atheist philosopher or something.
That's an oddly specific simile coming from you,
Twilight observed. Instantly, Rainbow Dash's muzzle scrunched up, and her pupils narrowed, prompting a round of laughter from her fellow members of the band.
I'm sorry, but shouldn't we be moving on?
Asked Fluttershy. Twilight started. Yes, we should.
You shouldn't apologize for it, right, Fluttershy. We really do need to be moving along, but slowly, if you please.
With gravity as it is, you really don't want to go too fast, or you'll get sick and dizzy. In spite of Rainbow Dash's grumbling at being grounded, the band progressed down the hallway, even as it twisted around, such that if one of them were able to look up through the ceiling, they would be able to see Harmonia's core dozens of grosses of miles straight up. The progressing gravity spells placed upon each host's length down the corridor were meant to gradually ease a pony into a new gravitational orientation from the normal, but not so gradually as to be unnoticeable. Particularly sensitive guards ponies in the past had gotten quite nauseous in passing through the especially sharp twists and turns. It had since become an unspoken rule of the facility to take corridors at an leisurely trot and keep one gaze down as to avoid vertigo. This corridor, to achieve the effect familiar artifacts, twisted around itself by one gross 6,009 degrees counterclockwise, before gradually sloping down into the very roots of the Crystal Mountains. This meant that, after the twisting, the corridor would seem to slope upwards to an angle 6,008 degrees off of the perceived horizontal. Skittish, or hasty ponies, could be dizzied by the nature of the gravity spells. The progression down the corridor was handled better by some than others. Verity kept staring down at her own hooves, almost bumping into Twilight as one either slowed down or the other sped up. Fluttershy trotted forward very slowly, to the point that Rainbow Dash flapped over behind her, staggering a little at the vertical shifting of gravity, and pushed her along with her head against Fluttershy's flank. Pinkie was bouncing off the walls and ceiling, seemingly unencumbered by the changes in gravity, as Twilight could swear that Pinkie occasionally walking along the walls or ceiling. At some point, Twilight thought that Pinkie was trotting along with her left hooves on the wall and right hooves on the ceiling. Each time Twilight double-taked, and Pinkie was suddenly on the floor with the rest of her band. Twilight put it down to her experiencing delusions because of all the gravitational shifts she was walking through, and gave it no further thought. After some minutes of trotting down an increasingly darkened corridor, never knowing if the hallway would take another twist or turn in some other disorienting location, the band of seven suddenly stepped into pitch blackness. Twilight's ears perked as she heard her hostess echoing more loudly than they had in the corridor. They entered a large space.
"I think we're here,"
Twilight whispered to her companions. The instant the words left her mouth, the room lit up brilliantly. After the progressively dimming glimmer-shimmer lights in the hallway ceiling, the bright white torches encircling the room were practically blinding. Twilight's foreleg flew up over her eyes, and some stumbling behind her told her the other six were doing the same. Blinking the spots out of her eyes, Twilight took in the Ponyville Archives hub. It was smaller than the central hub of the Crystal Mountains facility, but more decorated, and with no branch off the living quarters. There were ominous-looking wooden masks with wide, empty eyes and long muzzles. Deadly-looking spears, tipped with barred teeth rather than forged steel, rested against racks between torches and hallways. At the opposite end from the entryway stood a pair of statues like ponies, but with grooves along their bodies at intervals, manes that pointed straight out, not like mohawks, and rather broader muzzles than ponies. Zebra culture, Twilight said lowly.
It's rather frightening,
Rarity stammered.
Actually,
Twilight motioned toward the wooden masks.
Those masks are supposed to mean hello and welcome.
They don't look very welcoming, Rainbow Dash blurted out, ears flattened slightly.
It's welcoming to zebras,
Twilight said.
It's the culture they're used to, and we have to respect it, as different as it may be to us.
I spread out to the 6 corridors, branching out from the Ponyville Archives Hub.
Okay,
Twilight continued. We each take our own corridor and investigate for a book called Studies of Ponyville Culture. She lit up her Alicorn.
Every pony, touch your heads to my horn.
Why? Rainbow Dash asked. What's this all about, Purple Smart?
It's a simple signal spell I learned,
explained the Purple Unicorn.
I'm going to place a small enchantment on each of you, which will be lifted when one of you says the striped book by hook or crook. That will physically broadcast to each to the rest of us, a signal that we should all return to this hub. Will it hurt?
Fluttershy asked timidly. Don't matter if it hurts, Applejack said decisively. Stepping forward, I'll do it.
That's the spirit,
Twilight said with a joyfully triumphant tone, and touched her shimmering alicorn to Applejack's forehead. Their eyes met, and Twilight could count all the freckles on Applejack's scarred muzzle. As the Polemo stepped back, Twilight asked,
How do you feel, AJ?
Applejack lightly rubbed a forehoof against the side of her head, a faint pink light glowing from the roots of her mane. Well, tingles a mouth bit, but I can bear it. With some mild trepidation, each of the 4 other mares trotted up to Twilight, one by one, starting with Rarity. Twilight's pink glimmer shimmer glimmered on the roots of each mare's mane as she stepped away. Okay, Twilight nodded, before turning to each of the 6 corridors in turn.
Every pony, pick a branch off and look for Studies on Ponyville Culture book.
I'm going with Rarity! Spike interjected brightly. Trading nods and exclamations of assent, the 7 split down to 6 corridors in search of Queen Celestia's next clue to unlocking the elements of harmony and retaking Equestria. The Ursa Major would just not go down! It was not due to lack of training for the part guards ponies. It just moved too fast. Too fast for an Ursa Major. Last century chalked this up to there being sluggish, with so little activity up here in Equestria's far north. What was truly baffling was how it seemed to become senselessly slow when it was about to strike some pony, giving them just enough time to evade. Then some pony would lash out with a Dwemer beam or flying buck, and it would evade too quickly once more. Something's not right here. Valiant Blade huffed a flash, bracing himself for another assault on the Ursa. No bear titan can move that fast. I know, Flash replied. There's something off about this Ursa. Before he could think any further on the situation, a boom echoed from the south. In a flash, a band of stars leading back to Canterlot blackened out, and dark contrails stirred around the Ursa, which went deadly still, as if it were stuffed by some vile griffin of Roloff, before it dissipated into pink mist and faded away. Flash, Blade, and their comrades barely had time to comprehend what had unfolded in front of them before 3 dark purple shapes landed sharply upon the plains. They were 3 Pegasi, in flight suits not unlike the Wonderbolts. They looked altogether less friendly and formidable, and the mare's head, of wild blue mane, stepped forward to Flash Sentry.
Oh, well, doesn't look like these guards will be of any use to the Queen.
She hissed through a mouth of fangs. She lowered her flight goggles down below her muzzle, revealing golden eyes with slitted pupils and murderous intent.
They can't see through such an obvious illusion.
Nightingale's partners bared their teeth as well, and Flass's blood ran cold. The hallway was all straightforward and stuff. To Pinkie Pie, straightforward was boring. Why do something straightforward when it could be all crooked and wonky and fun? So, she bounced down the twisting hallway with all-encompassing glee, ricocheting off the walls and seamlessly, sometimes bouncing in opposite directions at once, just to laugh at the look that would be on a physic's face if they had one. Really, obeying the same laws of physics as ponies did wear down on her sometimes. Pinkie sung a song of friendship, and laughter, and love, and smiles to herself, which, for Pinkie Pie, meant singing for all the world to hear. Ignoring the social norms of not being a noise polluter, and frankly breaking the laws of physiology and gravity in such a way that Twilight Sparkle would be driven insane if she bore witness to this, Pinkie Pie found herself in the archive within a minute. The hallway expanded slightly on what ponies would call on all Pinkie's sides. Alcoves, every 10 paces down the hallway, winding downwards into harmonious core. Glimmer shields that were meant to prevent ponies from touching or interacting with their contents. For inside each alcove was an artifact of Ponyville, and inside each artifact was an eldritch energy that sought to twist the minds of ponies into putty. Pinkie didn't care in the slightest. So, she reached through each glimmer shield as though they were not here, and doodled funny faces on each of the snarling masks, produced some of her fluffy balloons from her flanks, and blew them up, and tied strings around the grasping caws of some of the lonesome statues. Pulled her custom-built party cannon from out of her saddlebags, and sent confetti and party favors flying both up and down the corridor at the same time, sprucing up every horrible thing in the hallway that she could find, and even some she couldn't, just in case. This place was just so gray, just like the rock farm. It needed some fun colors. Then every pony could smile. Even for a steadfast mare like Applejack, it still took a bit of effort to avoid looking too intently at any of the artifacts to her left or right. There were some downright peculiar doohickeys hereabouts, amulets made out of yellow teeth and opals, a staff made out of what had to be bone, a shrieking mask with ivory fangs, headed by a sign warning, has claimed the lives of 203 guards ponies. Bulky statues of looming apes with wide jaws and clutching nut claws. If she was not mistaken, it almost seemed as though the gleaming gemstones set as eyes were watching her. Thoughts that were not her own were whispering in her mind, trying to persuade her to break the magic shields and set them loose. Applejack shivered. The hallway seemed to stretch on for eternity in front of her and behind her. Her hostess echoed it to infinity. She might have been the last mare of Harmonia for all she knew. She didn't even hear the hostess or voices of the others anymore. Had they fallen victim to this weird magic of this Ponyville hoodoo whatchamacallits? She steeled herself. This was not a good line of thought to take. If Applejack of the Apples was the last of this band, she would see its goal through to the end. It was the last thing she'd do. Twilight Sparkle trusted her to see this task done, and she would stand by Twilight, even if she could not be by the unicorn's side. Folks back in Ponyville called her the loyalest of friends, most dependable of ponies. Stepping forward into the dark, Applejack resolved to put her bits where her mouth was. Ugh! This was nothing like we're daring do! Rainbow Dash was beside herself with boredom. She could hear the voices of these things hissing, "Free us!" this, and "unlimited power!" that. And really, what was it all about? She knew it was all a ruse, so why were they even bothering? The way that AK Yearling made it sound, Rainbow Dash would have thought they would be controlling her mind to draw her in, and disrupt the magical seals protecting them from less than awesome ponies, and let them out, and was Rainbow Dash actually almost touching her muzzle and hoof to a shield? Withdrawing sheepishly, Rainbow gave a nervous laugh to herself. Yeah, that's not totally creepy, she muttered to herself. I totally did just almost kill myself. I guess I better eat my words, she thought. I guess this This tiffy spear thing was trying to get me to pull it out. I guess things really are more like daring do than I thought. Bristling her cannons up to her withers, Rainbow Dash shook her head violently, her mane settling about even more unsettled on her neck than it had been previously. She really wasn't much of a daredevil, for this sort of thing daring do was. Archaeology was for eggheads. Whimpers echoed up and down the corridor. Fluttershy was quite overwhelmed by all the scary zebra things that were being stored here. Of course, she wanted to help Twilight bring back Queen Celestia and the sun, but this place, there was just so much hate all around her. Fluttershy froze. Did one of those statues just turn? Her heart leapt into her throat. It couldn't have moved, but maybe it did move. Fluttershy had never seen a creature like whatever the statue represented. It looked like a bull, but thinner and wilder. A sign above the alcove read, "Caution! This wildebeest statue has driven scores of zebras and guards ponies incurably insane." Brace filled her heart, her eyes beating the sapphires in its head. Something changed in the light of those gems as he glowered at it.
How dare you do that to those zebras and those ponies and their families and friends? All that pain and misery you put them through, and for what? You should be ashamed of yourself.
The wildebeest statue did not budge. It was just a statue, and Fluttershy quickly retreated from it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot that you're just a statue.
But the atmosphere of this wing of Ponyville's storage had changed. What had previously been an angry and oppressive air about the room had become more withdrawn. Radiating out past the wildebeest statue went a wave of fear and regret. And Fluttershy suddenly felt she was no longer unwelcome here.
See, if you can't do something nice, it's better not to do anything at all.
So, Rarity, how things have been for you lately? Spike asked in his most Casanova voice.
I'm sorry, Spike, but now's really not a good time to talk,
Rarity said in her most sympathetic tone. Spike's face fell. Oh, I see. You don't like me. He kicked ruefully at the stone floor, looking morosely at the wall for scraps of gem. Rarity placed a cloven hoof under the mulberry drake's chin, and drawing his eyes up to hers.
No, Spike, you mustn't let yourself believe that. Of course I like you.
His entire demeanor changed immediately, his little pupils widening to either sides of his eyes, and his smile almost splitting his head in two. Really? Rarity smiled.
Really, it's just we're on a bit of a tight schedule here, helping looking for that book for Twilight. I promise you, Spike, we can talk together, pony to pony, or rather, pony to dragon, after we've emerged and found a place to settle down. Promise?
Promise! With Spike's spirits lifted, Rarity faced down the hallway once more.
Now remember, Spike, we're looking for a book titled Studies on Ponyville Culture.
Spike turned from facing the left-hoof door of the corridor to face Rarity, who was enraptured by a golden statue of an ordinarily dressed ape wearing a savage grin of fangs, clutching in its knot claws the biggest ruby Spike had ever seen. Rarity's eyes shimmered with the crimson glow of the ruby. It was so big, so beautiful. It had to be over 10.5 megagross carats, and it was just sitting there, gathering dust, no pony wanting it or needing it. No pony would miss it. It deserved a better home than this. Spike watched Rarity warily. She was almost pulling herself toward the ruby, an odd glow in her eyes Spike didn't like. This wasn't right. That ruby looked delicious, but there was just something not right about this. It was down here for a reason. Looking up at the frame above the statue of Ruby, Spike read a sign that stated, "The ape should NEVER be parted with its ruby." The fact that the word "never" was triple underlined set Spike's heart in marathon speeds. In all his time living with his mom, Twilight, triple underlining meant something was of absolute utmost importance. Then again, Twilight triple underlined almost anything, but even so, "Snap out of it, Rarity! That ruby's not gold! Leave it alone!" Rarity's ears twisted hearing her name, but she continued to trot forward as if hypnotized. Spike began to cry. This was not good for Rarity. Even if the Dwimmer Shimmer shield in front of the ape statue didn't kill her, the ape statue itself most likely would. He gulped. I'm sorry, Rarity. He grabbed her tail and pulled it as sharply as he could. Rarity let out a high squeak as he jerked back from Spike's pulling, as he almost fell backwards on top of the little drake. Scrambling backwards from the fallen alabaster unicorn, Spike braced himself against the wall as she staggered back to her hooves, staring at the ape statue's base. Will she hurt him? Please don't hurt me, Rarity! She turned to face him, slowly, mechanically. Tears were flowing down her smiling muzzle, leaving black outside trails.
Why would I hurt that, Spike? You saved me from that wretched statue,
she said, her soft tones shifting briefly to feminist as he glanced back at the ape statue.
I felt compelled to take the ruby it had there. It's just too big to leave down here. But it's not mine to take or to give, is it?
Spike stiffed. I'm still sorry I hurt your tail. Rarity tweaked her leonine tail gingerly.
Well, I'll admit that it would be a little sore where you grabbed it, but I could have been a lot worse.
Suddenly, Spike, who was twiddling his thumbs, found himself in a periwinkle Dwimmer Shimmer. Rarity bringing him in toward her, her right foreleg wrapping around his small torso as she nuzzled him. Spike's round face flushed pink as he smiled stupidly at her warm touch.
I do feel like I owe you my life, Spike. My little knight in shining armor.
She opened her eyes, looking at the alcoves opposite the ape statue. One of them did not have a Dwimmer shield. On a small plinth inside of it was a thick book with wooden bindings and yellow pages. Its title, etched onto the cover, was Studies on Ponyville Culture. Rarity gasped.
Ah!
What is it, Rarity? Spike asked concernedly. Rarity beamed at Spike broadly. If it wasn't for him saving her hide there, they might have passed this by and not even noticed it. She really did owe him a real treat, one that she did not have to pass through her deadly Dwimmer shield for. She would if she could, but for now. Rarity's words had a peculiar echo to them as he said, The striped book! By hook or crook! A faint numbness trickled down Twilight's Alicorn as she looked at each of the successive Ponyvillian artifacts. At first, she dismissed it as some sort of mental intrusion by one of the terrifying sources of magic in this corridor. But when she heard a distinctly ursine roar in her mind's ear, she knew. Her Ursa Major had been extinguished. Time was limited now. Any minute now, the Crystal Mountains Guards ponies would return to their posts throughout the facility, and Twilight and her band would be trapped in here until they were eventually found. By which point, the guards would most certainly have switched their allegiance to Nightmare Moon, and the 7 of them would be brought to the chopping block in public executions as a testament to the folly of rebelling against the night, and Spike would die in
The striped book! By hook or crook!
Rarity's voice echoed in Twilight's head, and presumably the heads of each of the other 4 mares in their band. The fact that she had said these words, which Twilight chose because of the unlikelihood of any pony else using them in casual discourse, could only mean one thing. She found a book on the studies of Ponyville culture. The timing really could not have been better. Without sparing another look further down the corridor, Twilight turned and galloped as quickly as she could back down the hall, toward the hub. The nauseous spells of passing through the twisting and turning gravity orientation databases meant nothing to Twilight. All that mattered was reuniting with her friends, getting out of here, and deciphering the Queen's message. Reaching the hub, shaking her head to clear out the urge to heave, Applejack and Pinkie Pie were already waiting there, the latter bouncing back and forth from her left and right hooves. Got here as fast as we could, Sugar Cube! Applejack said, as Rainbow Dash flew out the 3rd corridor. Seems like Rarity beat us to the puck! Pinkie Pie was singing a song about how working together meant that every pony could laugh together. The first hallway, the one she had searched down, was streaming with confetti and streamers and blue and yellow balloons. Blinking, Twilight realized that, once more, Pinkie was short some balloons on her flanks. Pinkie, Rainbow Dash said quickly, you might want to straighten your cutie marks out.
Oh, really?
Pinkie said, looking over either shoulder and twisting her flanks to get a good look at her now asymmetrical cutie marks.
Okie dokie.
She took in a deep breath, deeper than Twilight thought she had ever seen any pony taking. Her cheeks swelling as her face twisted in concentrating and straining as though she were trying to pass a kidney stone. Pop! With a sound not unlike a party popper, the missing balloons popped into existence on the back of Pinky's flanks. With a gleeful smile, Pinky inspected her renewed cutie mark and gave a joyful cheer and leap.
Guys! Verity found a book! Verity found a book!
Spike called out as he ran down from the fifth corridor, Verity cantering closely behind. A wood-bound book levitated in her glimmer shimmer.
Excellent look, Verity! Spike!
Twilight said brightly, as Fluttershy trotted out of the fourth corridor. Twilight took the studies on Ponyville culture in her own glimmer shimmer and slipped it into her saddlebags.
Now that we're all here, we have to leave. Snow! The Ursa Major's been dispelled.
Her 6 addressees suddenly went stiff with shock, their pupils shrinking to points. Twilight lowered her head slightly.
Spike, get on my back. I can't wink out because of anti-winking wards, so we're going to have to run.
The band did not need telling twice. Spike bounded up to his surrogate mother and leapt onto her back, without her kneeling over for him, as he had already begun a full gallop straight out of the hallway leading back to the main hub. The other 5 mares hot on her heels. The sickening feeling of galloping at full speed through the gravity shears did not affect the 6 adrenaline-charged ponies. What mattered more than anything was getting the book of Ponyville culture out so that Queen's message could be decrypted. The 7 emerged into the hub from the Ponyville corridor and froze. The shadow bolts awaited them. Several guards ponies tied up in some blue miasmic mist by the hallway to the living quarters. Nightingale's malicious gaze shined even through her glowering shades, chilling the marrow of her 7 targets. Well, well, well. The Shadowbolt's captain sneered. Look what the Chimera dragged in. You fillies have got a huge bounty on your head, put forward by the Queen Nightmare Moon herself. Guess what? You're also trespassing on government land.
This is Queen Celestia's storage facility!
Twilight shouted in defiance. Nightingale bolted forward quicker than blinking, leaving a misty blue contrail behind. She bared her teeth in Twilight's face. Her off-white muzzle twisted in a snarl. Yellow light danced behind her goggles.
You do not interrupt me!
The Dark Captain growled, before her look settled into mere dark anger. This government facility is now under the purview of Queen of Everlasting Night. Any claims that Celestia could make to it are now rescinded. Nightingale reared up, as are your rights to live. Without thinking, Twilight quickly shot a Dwemer Simmer concussive beam into Nightingale's belly, sending the Shadowbolt's captain flying into the ceiling. Her 2 wing bunnies immediately flew up to her sides to aid her.
Run!
Twilight bellowed, and immediately she and her band charged under the dazed Nightingale as she pulled herself off the wall, shaking her head. As Fluttershy's tail crossed the threshold, Nightingale's voice echoed up into the tunnel to Twilight's ears.
I'll be fine. Windshear! Descent! Pursue them! Do not let them escape!
Daring to turn her head around to look at her pursuers, Twilight saw the 2 Shadowbolt stallions as glowing specks in the distance. Before she could call forth any banishment spells to send them back into the hub, Pinkie Pie leapt into the air, pulled out a bright blue cannon that had no business fitting into one of her saddlebags, and fired what looked like a ball of incandescent confetti at her pursuers. Windshear and Descent, for their part, were too baffled themselves by Pinkie's random attack, and were blown back by the packed party favors. Sinking her head lightly to drive this miasma out of its head, Twilight looked ahead to see the growing gateway back into the starlight and moonlight of the outside. Any minute now, they would be outside the Crystal Mountain's anti-winking wards. They were outside! Taking in a deep breath she did not realize she was holding, Twilight took in the rich night air. The earthy scent filled her nostrils, reinvigorating her even though she could not have been in the Crystal Mountain's facility for more than 2 hours.
Hey, Twilight, we're out!
Rainbow Dash shouted at Twilight as he flew up to her side.
Why didn't we wink out of here yet?
The anti-waking wards extend for half a mile southwards from the Crystal Mountains themselves. Hasselmeyer! Verity called out from behind. Applejack stole a glance back at the Crystal Mountains. The three shadow bolts had emerged, beelining for Twilight. Nightingale's fight goggles had shattered, revealing gleaming gold eyes with slitted pupils. Her eyes glowed with a murderous light. Circle Cube, we got company! Look into the sky! Fluttershy called out. More shadow bolts, 7 more, were descending from the southwest and southeast. Now what do we do? Rainbow Dash moaned. Now, time for you to put your sick moves to the test! A spark danced in Rainbow Dash's eye, as he beamed at Twilight like she never had before. We'll go, Captain Sparkle! She barked before taking off into the air, barrel rolling her way into the air to form a twister. Don't stop! Twilight called to the other 4 mares behind her. Just let Rainbow Dash distract them long enough for us to get out of these wards. No need to tell us twice, Twilight! Verity huffed. Up above, the shadow bolts were attempting to dive down toward the band galloping away from the Crystal Mountains. But none of the 9 got very close before Rainbow Dash swooped in with a twister at her beck and call. Rather than risk getting caught in the prismatic tornado and tossed out at cyclonic speed, potentially, into the side of the mountains, each of the shadow bolts veered off and attempted to regroup. Nightingale narrowed her eyes at Rainbow Dash's twister before she bolted forward, barrel rolling her way toward the cocky Pegasus Bronco. Rainbow grinned boisterously at the blunder Nightingale was making, before realizing that Nightingale's mood mirrored her own. Nightingale planned to fight her twister to twister. Oh, pony feathers! Down below, Twilight Sparkle felt a slight change in the way that magical currents traveled through the air. There was only one thing for it. We're out of the wards! Rainbow, get down here! But Rainbow Dash, so close to the twister of her own making, was struggling against the counterspin of Nightingale's, did not hear Twilight's call.
Stand back, Twilight!
Shouted Pinkie, stepping in front of Twilight.
I'll handle this!
Reaching into her saddlebag, Pinkie produced a megaphone. Just how much could she fit into them? And bellowed into it. Time to go, Daisy! Twilight shook her head to try to get the ringing out of her ears, as did Applejack, Fluttershy, and Rarity. But Rainbow Dash did hear Pinkie's call, as he broke off from her twister, flying down to her friends at a faster speed than terminal velocity, tucking her legs in as close to the body as she could. The winded shadow bolts, catching on to what she was doing, bolted down in pursuit to overtake her. This is going to be close! Twilight said through gritted teeth, as the other 4 mares huddled close to her. Rainbow Dash was pulling ahead of the 9. She tackled the grit to the ground. Twilight Sparkle and her band of 5 mares and 1 drake fell through her singularly into an indefinitely tight space, the 7 of them being crunched into a single, subatomic point. Everything, of all 7 of them being compressed together, mingling and crushing together, until the 7 emerged to take deep breaths of relief in the salty, misty air.